Okay, so this quick video is just kind of a hodgepodge of sort of common things we hear from online students that I kind of want you to just be prepared for in the classroom regarding field. There's a lot of other things they say about our program, but regarding field. And of course, this isn't every student. We have lots of students whose experience, I think, goes really well. But there are some hiccups in our messaging, I think, that we have hopefully taken care of, but I just wanted to list a couple. One is students might fuss a little bit about not getting the population that they want to work with in internship. So when they apply for field, they get the option of checking 3 populations. So they might say mental health, children, and crisis intervention or something. And they end up in a hospice. And they say, I don't understand how I got hospice when I do not want to work with older adults. Okay, number one, this is not job placement. It's really important that you understand that so that you can communicate that to them. Our goal is to put them in a place where they can show that they can meet CSWE competencies. This is not job placement. If a student is in Omaha, Nebraska, that's probably not a good example because that's probably a bigger city, somewhere rural Nebraska, and the only thing we can find where there's a field instructor and there are macro, meso, micro for generalist students is a hospice, that is where they will have to go. If they want to wait a term, sorry for the kitty, we have kittens. They want to wait a term and submit what we call referrals to an agency they know that they think can take them, then they can do that. But Baylor places students. We do the legwork. Students, I'm trying to get better about letting students know when those referrals are due so that we can look into those. That's a win-win. If they have an agency they want to go to, we want to put them there if they meet our criteria. And that means having a social worker to field instruct and that they can meet CSWE competencies. So, to sum that up, a lot of them fuss they did not get their population, and that is because of what I said in an earlier video. We do not have agencies knocking down our doors, and we are in a global pandemic. Okay, that's one. One is I submitted referrals, and nobody in the placement team did not follow up on them. Okay, remember, a referral is, actually, you probably don't know, so I'm saying remember, but I haven't gone over it. If students want a certain agency, want to be in a certain agency, this is the way for them to have control over this a little bit. They submit an application. They don't just hand off names. They submit an application of vetted referrals, meaning they have contacted the agency. The agency wants an intern, has shown interest. There is a field instructor there, and if there's not, the student is responsible for finding a field instructor. And then we take it over from there and try to see if they're willing to have a student. One part of this puzzle that students don't know about is Big Baylor has to enter into a quasi-legal agreement with these agencies. And sometimes if it's a hospital, it A, will not go through, or B, takes months. Smaller nonprofits without edits to our contract go through quickly. Bigger hospital systems, VAs are really hard to get contracts with. Students don't understand that part, and that's not their job to know that. But sometimes they think we're just delaying and not wanting them to go where they want to go. So they have to submit referrals that are viable and that we have an agreement with. We cannot send students to any agency where we do not have a fully executed memorandum of understanding. That is Big Baylor, not us. That does not originate from the Garland School. That is a Big Baylor issue. Third thing we hear, this has been a recent thing. My generalist practice is not clinical enough. Generalist practice is not clinical. Generalist is generalist, meaning micro, meso, macro, case management, resource linkage, those kind of things. They do not get a clinical placement until they are a clinical student. I have a student right now that I am working with that I'm about to email just because I think she doesn't understand that clinical doesn't happen in generalist. And then another thing we hear a lot is, oh, you guys are not flexible. I have a job. I want to work after hours, those kind of things. When students sign paperwork saying they intend to enroll. They sign that they understand the placement team is looking for placements between the hours of 9 and 5 Eastern time, or wherever they are, whatever time zone they're in. We do not have after hours sites. If for some chance we place a student and they have after hours availability, that's great, but we don't look for that. They have to be ready to do 2 placements, generalist and advanced, unless they're advanced standing, and then they just do the advanced, 8 to 5 business hours. And if they fuss about that, then you can say, well, remember you signed that when you intended to enroll. They also signed that they understood they could be placed 75 miles from their city or wherever they live, because we have to have some flexibility in radius. You know, if we're in a rural place or even a big city, you know, we've got to be able to do that, to have that flexibility. But I promise you, from working with this placement team, they try their very, very best to place students way closer than 75 miles. Okay, so those are a couple of things. Another thing that comes up that is really complicated, and we can kind of talk about this case by case, but students often want to use where they work as an internship, and we are all for that if it meets CSWE qualifications, and I have to approve it. So students have to submit what we call POE, place of employment application. I look for it, I look through it, and if it's approved, that's great. They cannot use it for both placements. They have to pick, is that going to be my advanced year? And most of them want it to be their advanced year. Or is it going to be my generalist year? So can't be at Starbucks, clearly, but if it's a social service agency, they have a field instructor available, then I usually do approve those. Post-pandemic, the Council on Social Work Education has become much more flexible on place of employments. And so that is great for our students. So those are a few things. I love to hear as you get into it what you're hearing. There's always things that don't feel like have been communicated well. We're trying our best to mitigate those by working with the admissions team. But those are some of the common things that I'm hearing.